What's going on, Clarence? Cornmeal. Let's do it. Demon right. Whoa. Demon right. Spicy mafia. Right. Spicy mafia. You gotta keep it spicy. If you see a queen, you better wife it. While we lit up in a lighter, makes things much brighter.
Well, all right. This is indeed a treat. I'm familiar with his work digitally. It's the great developer imaginary username. He's someone I lean on in Telegram that if I have a question, usually it's pretty inane, stupid, basic stuff, and he'll set aside some time for me, usually without fail, and answer every dumb question I have. So on this broader question, I guess now, of funding developers and whether or not that's going to be done through mining pools and orphaning blocks or some other way to go about it. He's the man to talk to of the moment. A lot of people are looking to him and his ideas right now, but without delving immediately into that. First off, man, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I know you don't normally do this. That you're heads down kind of guy. You're you work, and the whole publicity thing and marketing thing, and it's just not something you do. So I'm extremely flattered that you'd come on. Let's see. So, can you give us a little bit of background, in case people don't know your work, and kind of your involvement in Bitcoin Cash? I guess over the last few years.
Few years. Well, Bitcoin Cash itself has only existed for two and a half years.
Right.
Yeah. I got what people call into Bitcoin a little bit earlier than that. It is in late 2013 that I started noticing the existence of Bitcoin and tracked the fall of Mt. Gox. I've told a bunch of people about this, and then I started trading Bitcoin physically, and basically selling them to people who need it, and then later bought stuff on offpurse.io and a bunch of things like that. But the real involvement that got me really ramped up later on was the scaling debate that got more and more heated as time went on. And so it went on, and then I took some time on and off, and then Bitcoin Cash happened. And when Bitcoin Cash happened, I was first very sympathetic to the cause, but didn't think that it would go very far, because there was also there were a couple competing proposals at the time. Aside from Bitcoin Core's 1 megabyte forever, there was also Segment 2x. So I didn't think that Bitcoin Cash would go very far, but I was very sympathetic to the cause anyway. And then, of course, everyone knows what happened. Bitcoin Cash went to stratospheric heights after Segment 2x failed. And then Bitcoin, and then the what was called at the time Bitcoin Cash Fund, BCF, was founded, and it served as a rallying point for a lot of community members, and that's including me. Starting from the days when it was just a dinky little place in Rocket Chat, and then moved to Discord. So on there, I got to know a lot of very interesting personalities and indie guys, some of whom I remain friends to this day, really good friends. And then and then while I was on BCF and later BCA, Bitcoin Cash, the broader Bitcoin Cash community itself went through a series of up and downs. Most dramatically, the BSV split, after which BCA kind of went. Kind of just collapsed, and all that remains is the Discord channel. A lot of Bitcoin Cash people still go there because that's the only kind of notable Bitcoin Cash Discord presence. All during this way, I got to know a bunch of other people from both Bitcoin Unlimited, Bitcoin ABC, and other Electron Cash and other development teams, and I gradually realized that, well, maybe I can only code MATLAB and no other programming languages. A lot of people might still be under the mistaken belief that, wow, he must be really good at coding. No, I'm not. But apparently my skills and knowledge that I accumulated over the years in Bitcoin is in demand. Apparently, people value that. So yeah, along the way, I saw that people apparently wanted a bunch of things written, such as I started off in the very, very early cash shuffle days and wondered if a joint market proposal could be written to be rewritten to fit the reality on Bitcoin Cash, where there is a lot of block space. So I wrote an interesting little proposal on pay shuffle that didn't go anywhere, but it was an interesting exercise. And then later I wrote a number of specs when people seems to be stuck. So one of them is the adjustable block size proposal. It apparently is still pretty popular to this day, but since we are not anywhere close to filling 32 megabyte blocks, it's under hiatus. There is also the reusable address proposal, a way to have a static receiving address that nonetheless result in a bunch of different addresses every time you use it on the blockchain, and so enable really good privacy that can be coupled with handles. That apparently was also pretty popular, but we have a lack of people who can actually code, so that has been going pretty slow. So yeah, I was also involved in a number of other efforts. I think I've been most active in Electron Cash development, and I run a number of different nodes and backup services for developers and so on.
Yeah, no, that I appreciate you going into detail. It's just to kind of establish your bona fides, your street cred, as it were, so that when I ask you your opinions on certain topics, it's not just some idiot off the street that has an opinion, but someone who actually, again, has skin in the game, who's really kind of put in the work and has respect from the community. So that takes us to basically now, for lack of a better phrase, or I guess last week on the 22nd of January, seemingly out of nowhere, although that's not exactly correct. But as far as most of the community is concerned, out of nowhere, the mining pool BTC.TOP, along with signatories such as Jiang Zhuoer, Hypo Yang, Roger Ver, some pretty heavy hitters in the Bitcoin Cash space, released a funding plan that would involve a 12.5%. Some people call it a tax, some people call it a service fee, but in any case, it would be essentially 12.5% of the block reward shifted off to a fund of some kind that would be managed by a corporation in Hong Kong. This was all sort of the proposal that went out through the orphaning of blocks and miners who wouldn't cooperate. And then I guess it sort of was prefaced with not really debating the subject too much, but essentially getting out and just kind of doing this. It would be temporary, 6 months. Let's see what happens. We can raise maybe $6 million. Fund development. You mentioned in your lead up to my seemingly never-ending question here. It's hard to find people who can code and so I think everybody recognizes the need for development on Bitcoin Cash and making sure that that's funded correctly. This struck you as it did, I think, a lot of people immediately and viscerally. I remember you tweeting and we're in some Telegram chat rooms together. You were, I think it's safe to say, at the initial proposal, just reading it on its face, this was not something that you agreed with.
That is a fair assessment. I started dumping Bitcoin Cash a few hours after I read it.
Wow. And what about it? Because you eventually would take to, I would say is arguably one of the most, I think it'll turn out to be one of the most important articles or blog posts written in Bitcoin Cash history that you posted. It's called, and we'll have links to it in the show notes, Assessment and Proposal Regarding the Bitcoin Cash Infrastructure Funding Situation. And you took some of that outrage and you channeled it maybe a day later.
2 days.
Yeah. And so kind of take us through the ups and downs there. So you started selling your Bitcoin Cash. Were you thinking about just capitulating altogether, just bouncing?
So after I read it, I was in a lot of shock. So just to clarify a couple of things, apparently a lot of people that writes in support of that plan claims that this is totally not out of the blue. We've been talking about it since May 2018. I think that is an unfair characterization of how much the broader community knows about this plan, and to be frank, kind of an attempt to shift focus onto, well, you guys' shock is totally unjustified because we already talked about this. No, that is not the case. People have known it, and in fact, I know I completely know about what they were mentioning, how it was talked about in 2018. My impression was that it's shelved, and people generally have an understanding that it's a pretty bad idea. The rebuttal to that is usually, well, but it was only shelved back then because Craig Wright opposed it. No, some ideas are so bad that you don't care who opposed it and who support it. I don't care if Jesus Christ himself supports it. It's still a bad idea. So okay, back to what happened during those couple of days. I think I might soon write another blog post about it, but I want to clarify my stance on this. My stance on this is that I oppose the plan very deeply, not because it's being, some people say that, it's being funneled to a Hong Kong corporation. Maybe it's not to a Hong Kong corporation, it will be better. Maybe if we have some sort of minor voting, it will be better. Maybe if we have some other voting, maybe we have a very transparent organization set out, it will be better. What if we have a list of dev that you can donate to? No, that's not. Those are incremental improvements over the original thing, but that is not why me and a bunch of other people I know oppose it. the fundamental reason why people oppose it, Peter Risen wrote a post that touched some of the points, but I don't think he really focused enough on the main point. The main point is, when we get into Bitcoin, there are some fundamental understandings about its ledger, the record on which coins reside and transactions are recorded in transferring ownership. We have some unspoken but sometimes mentioned qualities that we think will always be preserved, no matter which technical changes do you see on through all the upgrades, soft forks and hard forks. The most famous of which is that there should never be more than 21 billion Bitcoins.
Right.
That is actually not written in the white paper, but everyone understands that, and everyone says that if you print more Bitcoin, that is not Bitcoin anymore. So that is one. Other things include not your keys, not your coins. If something is not accessible by a digital signature, then it's not yours. You can't touch it. On the other hand, your keys, your coins, if you can sign for a transaction, you can move it. And a bunch of other more subtle things, like if this one is actually mentioned in the white paper. If I sign for a transaction and the transaction pays a reasonable fee, it will get into a block before long. It cannot be censored forever. That is also something that we generally understand. If a transaction or an address can be censored forever, then Bitcoin has basically failed. And on top of that, I think we come around to the heart of the problem, which is that we also generally understand that the 21 million Bitcoins are distributed in a distribution schedule. We have every 4 years, and the number of coins go down every 4 years per block. And those coins are distributed to miners who do proof of work for the security of the network in exchange for those coins. I think that is a pretty fundamental part, that anyone can come in, anyone can mine, and when they mine, they get blocks, and through the blocks, they get the coins promised to them by the inflation schedule. That is the distribution schedule that I think is no less important than the 21 million limit. And then in comes this guy saying, no, those coins are not going to the miners anymore. We are going to take 12.5%. And then to me, it's not actually very important who it goes to. I
was going to ask, yeah.
It could be Jesus Christ. It could be Amory. It could be me. It could be Poxed. To me, that is not terribly important. The important thing is that you take it out of what people generally understand as what's supposed to go for miners in exchange for their proof of work, and you give it to some specific dudes. I think that is wrong. If I wanted a coin that does that, I would have gone to Zcash, where this is the deal. This was the deal from day one. Or I could go to Ethereum, where this kind of deal is also present from day one through the ICO. And in fact, I've been quite open in my criticism towards what they do there, which is that Ethereum actually through Midway, they actually did it twice. in terms of just a bunch of guys coming in together and say, we overpaid for our security, let's lower it, let's pay our miners less, and they did just that. They paid their miners less coins. That's it. To me, they didn't even pay for any specific deals. They just stopped paying the miners that much, and to me, that is no less bad. I guess the Ethereum community is okay with it ish, but to me, that is a violation. You are crafting and recrafting monetary policy as you go. What different are you from the U.S. federal government? You might, and anyway, I went around to the philosophical side a little bit too much, perhaps.
So basically, the economics of Bitcoin changes with this proposal, at least in theory, and to steel man them a little bit. Temporarily. So that's an interesting point, because as you've stated, you don't really care what the excuse is, what the pretext is. It's that particular function in and of itself. Does it matter at all? And I want to sort of get off the debate as soon as possible and get into your some of your solutions, but it's worth pursuing maybe for a second here. Does it matter at all that these are mining pools? That it's not necessarily coming from the people who would benefit by it, but then it's coming from the broader. So distinguishing, between miners, which make up the mining pools, and mining pools as a broader sort of mining community. Does it matter that the proposal has come from the mining community, through which at least part of your explanation or your outreach, I guess, is on behalf of?
So to me, it does not matter, because, and there has been debate about this, like say, some miners came up to say that these pools do not represent us, we're gonna stage a revolt, which I kind of appreciate, but that is not my main point. Okay. Even if they are completely united and they tell everyone that, in fact, we are not going to pay anyone specific. Note that paying someone specific is also a point of my that I oppose, and I oppose a lot, because that turns the issuance from public into semi-private, I think. But aside from that, I think monetary policy is not something that the miners should change. I don't think they should do that at all. There are a few things that the miners can do but should not do. I think this is one of them. The other ones, of course, being reorganization for the sake of double spending and censorship. Those are the two most famous ones. If the miners eventually somehow find themselves convenient to do that, then the project has failed.
Interesting. And yeah, my next question was going to be, so what if they all decided to do it, and you're consistent there logically in that you believe it still violates the fundamental economics of Bitcoin. So very, very, very interesting. So the only I guess, so CoinSpice is agnostic officially on the plan and any sort of efforts to improve it or alter it or something else. But I think where we do agree with the plan, or at least in its sentiment, is that there's a need for dev funding at the protocol level. I didn't think that was controversial. So in other words, not the mechanism for funding rather, but funding protocol devs, just period, in a consistent or sort of bigger manner. But I guess that is controversial, so I have to acknowledge that. But do you think there is a need to fund devs? So one last little sort of footnote here. Bloomberg picked up the Bitcoin Cash drama that you and I are headlong in here, and they cited some company is saying something like 30%. Bitcoin Cash community has lost 30% of its developers. And so do you think there is a need to fund developers in the way, not in the way, but in the spirit that the proposal gets at?
So I think there absolutely is a need to pay people to do this kind of, I should call it, the kind of dirty and, in a sense, often not very glamorous, because you do a lot of unappreciated coordination. You have to accommodate people's needs, and you are not directly user-facing, so a lot of people don't think of you when they open their wallets. So I think there is, and a lot of the money-making business also don't directly interact with you. They interact with someone else. So I think there is a need to fund them, or at least fund them for long enough until we can get the economy big enough so that all the little bit of contributions and whatnot can get them into a self-sustaining place, just like the Linux Foundation. I think there is a need. I don't actually dispute that. What I do dispute is sacrificing something more important for this purpose.
Yeah, and I'm glad you made both points because I think they're very, very, very important to establish at the outset here. Can we say that whatever else Jiang Zhuoer did by dropping this bomb on January 22nd, he has at least started a conversation that I think needed to happen. Is that fair, or am I too generous?
Well, that conversation has been going on for a while. There has been a lot of back. Yes, but yes, this it is sort of fair to say that this is what forced everyone into looking at it and taking it head on, instead of saying that, well, there is drama in the background, but I'm going to do something else that is more important. This kind of forced the dialogue into, well, there is nothing more important than this. And yeah, while this is not how I prefer to do it, I hope this can yet turn into something good, and that is why I wrote that proposal.
And that's why I have you on. I don't like doing contentious podcasts, and this has not been one at all. So I don't intend to play gotcha with people, and I certainly don't want to do a point counterpoint or anything like that. And what I've appreciated about your take, your longer takes, where you can kind of let your hair down on read.cash, is how much effort you're putting into, if not solving the problem, coming closer to Sue. So you've moved from outrage, kind of quasi capitulation, to, okay, well, there are better ideas, and as far as you're concerned, and here's maybe how we can attack them. It's early days, and so I don't expect you to have a full thought out, complete, ready to ship, website and smart contracts and so on. But what have you come up with, and what has it kind of got you thinking about?
Well, what got me thinking is that none of this, none of what I wrote in that piece was particularly new. Assurance contract and even dominant assurance contracts has been along forever. Scheduled payment is certainly not something that is new. We got that on Bitcoin Cash for a while already. But what got me writing about this is that over the months and a couple of years, I eventually realized that people really need something that is shoved in front of their face to appreciate it. Just casually mentioning it or talking about in chat rooms here and there is definitely not enough. And if you are wondering whether people know something, the answer is generally no, they don't. And if you are asking whether people understand something, the answer is also probably not. So because of this shock, I feel that there is a great need to write about it, to put them together and actually take the effort and take the charge to push, if not myself, because of the code, to actually coordinate people to do it. I think,
And you've assembled a bit of a team at this point, almost organically. I saw you've got 2 or 3 other guys that you're working with now. And what's sort of the early formation? What I saw a tweet that had a kind of an enticing screen grab or picture of a mock-up. What are you thinking?
So what I'm thinking is that we have a lack of really appealing non-custodial funding that is suitable for because custodial funding is not so great. There have been some custodial funding site attempts in the past, but I feel like custodial sites are not that great for something of this size. It's probably fine for a couple $100, but if we are talking about $1 million, custodial sites become kind of a problem. And so there is a need for non-custodial funding websites, and there is a need in particular to lower the friction. So we will need to polish that a lot. And I want to stress about this when I'm on air is that getting this website out there just reduces friction and get the community to be excited about it a little. But that is not the end game. To really solve this problem, it comes back to humans. It comes back to meet space, people talking to each other and getting what each other wants and needs in front of each other and coming to an agreement. That is the hard part, and the website can only aid that. So I also intend to help that. I think the big holders and Bitcoin ABC and other software project teams, there is a grave need to talk to each other in a constructive manner. And hopefully this website can be the start of that and also facilitate the conclusion of that.
And who have you recruited so far to help you work on sort of an alternative funding proposal?
Right now, on the website, we got Emergent Reasons, who is helping me coordinate the effort and also provide a lot of how should I say, guerrilla help here and there. And then there is Jonathan Silverblood and also Acidsploit, both of whom are working on the website half of things. And then there is Dagor, a longtime veteran. People might know that he previously worked on Bitcoin XT. He is working on the Electron Cash plugin side of things. These are the people that have contributed to this mainly so far. There are a few other people in the channel that kind of jump in and offered others design suggestions and things, and they might contribute more to the project later.
Yeah, and I think there's a frustration when anybody hears about voluntary funding in the manner that you guys are trying to establish here. That Jesus, it would just be so much easier if there was just a giant whale or handful of whales just come in, slap down the money, and be done with it. Or in the case of the initial proposal, just kind of brute forcing the the issue and solving it. So it's neat that you're taking on this topic while using the principles that you're advocating. So, how much hope do you hold out for it to raise the kind of money that the initial proposal was I guess projecting in the upwards of $6 million for protocol development? Do you think it's possible through just kind of voluntary in the manner that you guys are working on? Do you think it's possible to reach those levels?
So there is too much uncertainty for me to say whether it's looking good or looking bad. I think the website itself is looking good, but on the overall thing, it really, really, really depends on how much all the relevant players, including Bitcoin ABC, and the big holders, the big whales, the mining pools, it really depends on how much and on how much goodwill they have in terms of coming to the table and most importantly listening to what other people want and making compromises, which has been really lacking as far as I can tell over the months and years. And in terms of the $6 million goal, I think if you look closer, not all of that is. People generally have an impression that not all of that is meant for, or should be meant for Bitcoin ABC protocol development, and sure. I think that is fair. And if we are going all voluntary, that might as well be broken down into individual projects.
Got it. And when do you expect to have something kind of up and running that you can present to the community? Is it your impression, even with Bitcoin.com sort of backing off a little bit from the formal proposal and wanting more dialogue? Are you under the impression that you have until May 15th to make something happen, or longer or shorter?
I don't think we have until May 15th. I think we have a lot less time than that. I say this partly because of the worries that after May 15th, whoever is funding Bitcoin ABC right now might just not have the money anyway, and it will be disbanded to great damage of the chain's ecosystem. And another big part is that I don't think we are talking to the Chinese community enough. We make a lot of noise here on the English side, but a lot of our holders and traders and indeed probably users are on the Chinese side, and I don't think we talk to them enough. The last time I checked what people told me through about WeChat, I was horrified to see that there is a lot of misinformation over there about the nature of this proposal, and a lot of people just don't care. I think we need to do a lot more to talk to that side. So yeah, not just in terms of technology and the website and tools. We have a lot of space work to do, and it needs to be done quickly, or the community will fracture anyway.
Wow, what a fascinating time to be in Bitcoin Cash, and to be looking at these issues from an outsider's perspective, as far as not having a particular dog in the fight. It is super interesting to see people focused, looking at the issue and where it eventually take peer-to-peer electronic cash. I'm hopeful And the reason that I reached out is because I was, looking exactly for this. Someone who's smart, who can coordinate, try to problem solve, and offer an alternative. And one way or the other, I think everybody's rooting for you, rooting for something to bring the community together, whether that's your guys' work or as we've seen so often the case in this space. They roll something out and they try it and people go nah, and then something else sort of follows. So I don't think it's all for naught. I think it's really, really admirable work, and I applaud you for taking the anger, and because that's in my experience usually what happens. People like to be mad, and then they like to continue being mad, and they never really do anything about it. And so this is completely different.
So one thing I want to note here, sorry for interruption, is that there are quite a few people that I know, through this bad episode. There are quite a few people that I know have contributed a lot to the community, in and out, especially on the front of adoption. They are upset, and they are genuinely going to quit. A lot of them just told me they never thought there will be a day when they would actually go on Coinbase and hit the sell button. It is really heartbreaking. If people are wondering, this is not any less impactful than the BSB split. In fact, it is more, because I think these people are genuinely good. These are genuinely good people. Don't replace them with speculative moon boys who are just here because they heard that the mining pools are giving a big gift to the dev, some sort of free lunch that is going to moon Bitcoin Cash. Don't replace them with these people. Yeah, to Bitcoin ABC guys, really seriously, people have been asking about a budget of some sort for a long time, for as far as I can remember. I know that you guys are too busy to do it, and among other things. I'm here. I'm here. If you want help, ask me.
Wow, there it is. Again, rooting for you. I think you're headed in the right direction as far as your energy and your emphasis, and I think that's where it needs to be. And I know that even some people who were in favor of the proposal the initial proposal have liked your ideas and how you're looking at it. So good on you, man. Thanks, by the way, for late notice coming through again to help answer some questions for me and for the broader Bitcoin Cash community. I know this is a tense time for you, and again, that you don't do this a whole lot. So really, really appreciate it. Where can people find your work? Where can they follow you? Where can they kind of see how your ideas evolve and all that good stuff going forward?
Well, me personally, I have a Twitter account at @IM_uname. I'm active in a few Telegram channels. Just ask, and I also keep my own blog at blog.imaginarycash. But I sort of need to port some of the read.cash items back. Read.cash is just really slick and really easy to use. It's very easy to fall into the trap where you just go there and write something and then be satisfied with it, and then you forget to port back to your old block.
Well, it's that, and also the $1,000 doesn't hurt either, right?
Oh my god. Yeah, there's also that. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, well, see, I'm thinking this whole damn thing has been a cabal for Read.cash. I think that's who we have to blame for this, because they've definitely gotten the windfall here. But thanks so much for coming on the show, man, and all the best to you.
Thank you.
Gotta keep it spicy.